Hey, Sox fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. I am Nick Murawski. This is episode 231, believe it or not. We are in season 5 of doing this, and what a season it has been this year. You can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We got a YouTube channel. We do this live on Sundays. Join us, jump in the comments. We do appreciate it. There's a lot to talk about. Especially from this past weekend. I don't know if you heard, something went down on Saturday in Cleveland in the 6th inning. To break everything up with me, my dear friend for so many years, a lifelong Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Hey, buddy. And you had mentioned before we start recording, we may have some new audience members or some new listeners joining us tonight. So welcome if you're new to this show. And we usually go about, 40 to 45 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer. That should give us plenty of time to go over all of Tim Anderson's recent tweets. So should we start from the top? Or
some of them are, I don't even know what to make of them. I mean, you could just syllables, multisyllabic. Was there punctuation? Okay, 3 dots after that. It's very, I wouldn't even go there, Pat. I think you give yourself a headache.
Oh, well, that's all I had.
You can try.
That's all I brought to the table. I printed them all out. I ran through all my black ink, and I have no paper left.
That would be one heck of an episode. Maybe if we could fire up an episode, a postscript to this, if you just cold reading all of TA's tweets just in a straight voice, that would be outstanding. I would love that.
We need to narrate it. Like, who's the best narrator you could have? You could have.
Remember what was it? Was it Charlton Heston that was cold reading some rap lyrics or something? Years ago. And he was just doing it straight, man. He was not putting any emphasis on anything, just reading it. It was just a cold read, and that's what we need.
So you got that going on.
Yeah.
So you got that to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Our state of the Sox, it's ugly, but this is where we're at with 2 months left. 45-68, 23 games under 500, 13 and a half games back if you're still paying attention, which I am. And that fight on Saturday might have just got us going. It might have started the fire here these last 2 months.
That's what turns around the season sometimes. That's what you need, the spark.
Ask Pedro Grifol. He'll tell you all about it. We got some stuff from Grifol. Obviously, since the last we talked, there have been some more trades that went down and some trades that didn't go down. Sox beat Cleveland 2 out of 3. They've won, I believe, the season series now, but no one's going to talk about anything except for that 6th inning fist fight. We'll be talking about that for a while. And the Sox were swept by Texas, which is no surprise. As Dane Dunning, a former White Sox pitcher, really took us to task, man. That was one heck of an outing by him. So a lot to get to. Where do you want to? You just want to jump in with this TA stuff? And
we might as well. I mean, that's the biggest thing from the week.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay, I'm watching this live, Pat. I was watching this live Saturday night, and Ramirez went in kind of hard, went through. Everybody's watched the video a million times, and you've probably seen the different comments from both sides. And, Ramirez comes up, pointing at him, finger in face. TA drops the glove. I haven't seen anything quite like this before.
Yeah.
You see it at the mound, but not at second base. And Benetti and Stone talked about how it, reminded them of a hockey fight.
Yeah.
TA throws the glove down and it's fists up. It's very hockey-esque. The umpire gets kind of pushed out of the way.
And he was nowhere to be seen ever again.
It was like an old-timey WWF, like when someone would just flick the referee with their forearm, and the referee would go flying off the ropes and be like concussed for multiple minutes while some kind of foreign object was thrown into the ring. Wow, McMahon, can you believe it? And so it's just TA and Ramirez. And some swings happen, and it's just got sloppy. And then people come in, and then Ramirez, I don't even think he knew where he was throwing his punch. If you look at the video and some of the still frames, his head was a different direction, but he connected with TA's jaw. He fumbles backwards, goes down. TA might have got a body shot in, and maybe a shot in before. And then it's benches and mayhem and managers and all that kind of stuff. So set the stage. Your thoughts, Pat.
I was actually out to dinner with my wife, and you ever have I'm sure you have, Nick, because you've been married and in a relationship for a long time now.
Sure.
And you're a huge fan, and I'm sure you've had a meal or two, and you're trying to really focus in on your lovely bride. And just over what would have been Katie's left shoulder is the TV, and I'm just like, a game that I wasn't expecting to even really care that much about.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really, and then my eyes are just drawn to this, and I have to explain, because obviously she can see that my eyes are being drawn in different. I'm like, I'm gonna have to tell you something right now. There's a humongous brawl happening on the TV, and I have to
stop you.
I love you very much. Nothing could ever change that, but I have to pay attention to this all happening. So I couldn't hear. I wasn't hearing what I couldn't. First of all, I'm watching the replays and I'm watching this all unfold, and I'm trying to understand what was the cause of Ramirez's. What was his issue? It looks so like nothing to me. A slide between the legs, a tag that was applied. You always keep the tag on long.
It seemed like it was a hard tag, according to Ramirez. Like it was an aggressive two-handed tag.
I'm so sorry that you had an aggressive tag put on you.
Now, however, Pat, in his post-game comments, Ramirez said that this has been kind of happening. This is what TA is almost. I don't want to mishandle the quote, but to an effect of, this is the way TA has been doing things. And I think it was game one of the series, right, where a hand was pushed off the bag. Kind of TA might have pushed off a hand, and I don't know if that's the reputation that TA has. And Francona said that Anderson was jawing at a Cleveland guy, and the umpire told him to cool it, like stop it. So it sounds like something was obviously brewing from, swelling, a groundswell, as you would say. Now, in my mind, for Anderson, this has just been like boiling for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like everything that's been happening in his personal life, his play, like his season, the White Sox, probably a dozen other things that we have no idea about. And it just got down to this is happening.
Yeah.
And I think according to Ramirez, TA said, I want to fight, or let's fight, or I would like to fight you. It probably wasn't as
excuse me, what, sir, while you're sliding through my legs, if you
would you care to fight tonight?
I think let's fight.
And Ramirez said, well, I've got to defend myself, and there you go. And that's what happened.
Yeah, it is all very strange, but you talk about the jawing and the bad blood. I'm surprised it took this long, given the fact, you remember at the end of the season last year when the Guardians won the division, the chanting that came out of and put on social media that the Guardians had directed at the White Sox, who weren't even, finished in second place in the division at the time. So it wasn't like they had to go through the White Sox really to win that division. And it was all directed at the Chicago White Sox and their manager. And all. So I'm actually surprised that something hadn't happened earlier. Maybe there was things being said. Maybe there's been bad blood between these two teams since that point, or maybe before then. I don't really know. But, Tim Anderson getting suspended towards the end of the year is kind of like, it happens every year. So it doesn't surprise me. And again, it doesn't surprise me that two teams in the same division there's no love lost between these two teams. And the Guardians are not a great team. The Sox are a terrible team. So you've got two sub 500 teams, throwing blows at each other. And somebody had mentioned, and I'm sure we would get to it at some point, but the most comical thing is that Eloy Jimenez is limping around the field afterwards, and after the melee, and as it's happening, it's like, sir, you are not allowed to celebrate during any kind of a victory or walk off, you just walk right into the showers. And if there is a fight that happens, you just go sit on the bench and you wait there until we
Yeah.
tell you it's
Well, he
okay.
needs a handler. He needs someone with a bubble wrap robe that just kind of like just engulfs him, kind of like how Andrew Vaughn engulfed TA
Yes.
in his arms to hold him back. Aloy needs a handler that just has this bubble wrap robe, and just anytime things look kind of amiss, like there might be some kind of emotion that might catch Aloy off guard because he might have to make a sudden movement. Here comes the handler with the bubble wrap robe. Just calm down, Aloy. You're
You might
not
have
going
to do a
anywhere.
sudden movement. Whether a celebratory movement or
Just
a movement, you're not really needed in a fight. We don't. We're good. We don't need you there.
Yeah.
Just
Well, he stayed
settle
in
it
the
down.
game and he played on Sunday, I believe.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Sydney, thank you for that comment. Yeah, that was typical. That was like him limping around. It's like what happened? Like what, all I saw was him with his arms up, kind of almost let's just all cooler heads prevail type of thing. So
And then
that's
Tim
Aloy
Anderson
though
comes
for you.
back. And then Timmy comes back like you talk about WWE style, right? He comes back out of the dugout to try and go back after the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
That's, just
Well,
it's
WWE,
over.
it would be with a chair, right? He'd come
Yeah.
out from backstage, running towards the ring with a chair or something, or
You
yeah,
grab it under the curtain underneath the ring
right.
there.
It was there the whole time. He just needed to go grab it. Yeah, I look. Hey, the Sox won the series. You could pop off to Cleveland. We can all pop off to Cleveland. I don't care for Cleveland. I don't care for anybody else in the AL Central, obviously. But the Sox are 23 games under 500, and they are 13 and a half games back. Until we are over Cleveland in those standings, and until we could look down on Cleveland, hey, you take your series and you move on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And this thing that goes down on Saturday with TA Ramirez and, look, why do we need that? Why is that the thing that's going to spark this Sox team? Is that really what we've been missing? A fist fight? We needed a brawl at second base to get this team going. I'm sorry. That to me just seems kind of cheap. Does that make sense?
Does a brawl help you play fundamentally sound baseball, run the bases properly, and not commit errors? I don't think so. I've never heard of you can have a spark and change your season and bring people together. Maybe that's what it would have changed, Nick, because as I was in the hallways at work last week, Jonathan Hood came up to me and said, just hearing of, that there's there's cliques in the locker room and there's maybe this is what you're talking about when it can galvanize people and bring them together, not necessarily that it's going to turn around and what they do with not striking out so often or walking more, all this kind of stuff, but bringing people together and galvanizing them for one cause. But it's way too late for that now.
It's way too late for that, and I think you you hit it, man. It's like, is this, excuse me, is this going to change how the Sox play baseball? Maybe it's cool. You got each other's backs and, team first and all this stuff. But is this going to change the fundamentals? Is this going to change hitting cutoff guys and doing the details, the little things? I mean, I got this quote right here pulled up from Pedro Grifol right before the Cleveland series. So right before Friday. And this is what Grifol wants, the White Sox to accomplish the last 2 months. We've got 2 months left, and they are critical 2 months, Grifol said. This is not just a finish the season out type of 2 months for us. We're never going to compromise a major league win because they're really, really hard to come by. At the same time, there are things we have to correct before we move forward, and that's one of them. We just have to get better at it. I want to clean up some of these things, the fundamentals, the details, just the things that got away from us a little bit. It wasn't that we didn't address them. It's just that they haven't gotten better. When I say things are on me, that's what I mean. They're on me. We've shown bits and pieces of every facet, yet we haven't put it all together as one. A fight's not going to change that. A fight maybe gets the energy up, maybe juices you for the next game, which happened on Sunday, but these things that Griffol's talking about, that he continually talks about and has been talking about since day one, that's the big issue. That is the big issue. Don't turn your eyes away from all that stuff.
Yeah, it's what do you make of Nick? There was some chatter afterwards. Twitter obviously was on fire on Saturday night. Do you make of anything of no Sox player really going after Ramirez? Like the guy never got touched. Now there was a wall that was put up. I know there was benches clearing and maybe there wasn't an opportunity, but people were saying that speaks volumes that nobody went after Ramirez. It was more of pulling Tim Anderson away.
I guess you can create those different scenarios and create, different theories and stuff. I don't make too much of it. I really don't. I think this was something that has been weighing on Tim Anderson, and it was just a matter of time before some issue set something off in him. We've all been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you've just hit a breaking point. And whether it is an issue at work or in a relationship or in a friendship or, whatever it may be. And it's never like the thing. It's always the other things, right? It's never the thing that actually went down. I don't really think it was a Ramirez situation. I think it's other things. And it just was that particular instance in the 6th inning on Saturday that just set it all off.
Yeah. Well, again, it was very interesting. Again, the comments that were being made by a lot of people all over, Twitter and all over baseball. That's a good one. Nick, do you want to address that last one up there by MC21?
TA was just, aggravated that I'm leaving locked on. So he went at it with Ramirez. Could be. I mean, word travels.
That was a straw.
That was it. It was just like of all the things. Back. Yeah, I mean, I think we've got some new, we got some folks in from the lockdown world, and I do appreciate that. And for some Good Guys Talk Back people that maybe haven't filtered into the lockdown world, I completely understand it. It's a commitment, but I've been doing lockdown since the beginning of the 2022 season, all through this past offseason. It's been a grind. I've loved it, man. I've absolutely loved it. And if you think I'm lying, I'm telling you. I mean, I love talking White Sox baseball, and the time has come where I've got to pass the keys off to somebody else. So August 17th, so next Thursday will be my last episode, but everything is staying right here with Good Guys Talk Back, buddy. And I'm hoping to even maybe put out, another couple episodes a week of Good Guys. When things break, when there's other fights that happen with Griffol makes another goofy statement. So yeah, it's just time, but it's just been, it's been a grind, but
Well, you've done a fantastic job. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. Get on and do a podcast every day, especially with the team playing the way it has over the past year and a half and doing it solo for the most part. And you've had guests on from here from time to time, but you've done a fantastic job. And Nick, my hat's off to you for what you've done. Greg asked for a daily Good Guys Talk Back podcast. I had mentioned my wife earlier. I guess I would be minus a wife if I decided to do a daily Good Guys Talk Back podcast.
If we could figure out the sponsors, I would be all for. I would take on that, and Pat, you'll slip in whenever you can.
Was that right?
I mean, we're hey man, we're not peddling anything to anybody. We don't have sponsors. We barely have merchandise, if ever. Every now and then we'll get some t-shirts in that we can give out. So we're just here for White Sox talk. If I could get some sponsors that are interested, man, we could maybe get a daily thing going on. So
hey, wow, you're really putting a commitment on me here. But this is our pre-show and after-show meeting.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, seriously, hats off to Nick and the person that comes in after you, which I know most people are asking for me. No, it is not going to be me. They have some big shoes to fill, and I hope they can hold a candle to the great Nick
Oh,
Murawski.
I'm sure they'll find their own voice, and that I don't own it, and someone else can really cut their teeth. So,
Can someone, I mean, for
yeah.
this team, I mean, all it really deserves is just put on StreamYard, hit record. They could put like a broom with a mustache on it and hit record for 30 minutes. It'd be, all this team is probably worth is just an inanimate object.
Well, it's, I'm looking at these next 2 months as, who's going to maybe be with the White Sox in 2024. I'm looking at guys specifically like Kopech that I think is going to be around, and I think he's going to be in the starting rotation. I didn't mind his outing at all on Saturday. I mean, he was out there. He was throwing some no-hit baseball. I mean, the pitches were piling up. He had, I think, walked 4 at the end of the day. He sat out that 18-minute delay and came right back in there. And he was gassed. You could tell he was gassed, and he got, I think, pulled in the 6th. But that was a much better outing than what we've seen. And that's the type of stuff that you can build on. I need that from Kopech. I need him, and he needs it for himself and for the organization and for the fans and whatever. He needs to string some of these together throughout August and September. So he has some body of work, a positive body of work that he can look at in the offseason and say, I finished good. Okay. If I'm confused on repeatable motion or arm slot or, how the ball's coming out of my hand with different pitches, I really liked how I finished my season. I'm going to go back to some of that video. For him, I think, for everybody it matters, but for him specifically to have that, I think is going to be huge, and there's other guys, and, Griffol's talking about, different battles and focusing on different things. And my question to you, though, and I do want to get to some of the trades, and talk about your thoughts on Berger leaving for Miami and, Moncada's back issue. But is this team contending in 2024?
No.
You've seen all the quotes. You've seen all the thought. What's your feeling on that?
As it stands right now, no. I mean, again, it would have to be a seismic shift in organizational philosophy this offseason for this team to be a competitive team in 2024, because there's too many holes that need to be filled in. To fill them next year would require quite an investment in terms of free agents, in my opinion. I don't really know what you have in right field with Oscar Colas. They keep putting him out there, and rightfully so, but I don't really know if he's the answer, Nick. Do you? I mean, there's a lot of potential there. The power potential is there, but he has been a mystery playing right field defensively, and I just don't know that he's 100% ready. So if you are going to contend next year, you can't look at it as, well, we're still in the development stage for our right fielder. Same thing with second base. We've talked about these two positions ad nauseum, and now you have to rebuild a starting staff, which, again, I don't know, who is in the pipeline in order to fill that. So again, you're going out and you're spending probably top dollar on top starting pitching, which you're going to have to if you're going to want to compete next year. So I just don't see it because of the people that are making decisions, unless, again, the people that are making decisions are told that they don't have a job anymore.
The people that are making the decisions have made the decisions for a long, long time. There was a great article in the Chicago Sun-Times this past week. Chris DeLuca, I think I'm right on that name. It was a great op-ed on just, Rick Hahn and just continuing to spin things, and nothing changes, and there's zero accountability. Find that article if you can. It's worth your time. This was Rick Hahn after the trade deadline, looking into 2024. We still have many impactful talents in Chicago. We still play in a division in which nobody has run away and hidden. Certainly competing for the postseason is viable in 2024. In all candor, sitting here 55 minutes after the deadline just ended, proclaiming this is how we're going to get there in 24 isn't exactly our mission. Based upon what we're able to do in this year's draft and what we've been able to do at the deadline, the organization is much, much stronger for 24 and beyond. Precisely what that looks like in terms of the big league level in 24. Let's get to the end of the season and assess everything. As always, this is an interesting part. You'll hear directly about what the plan is for the people in charge. A kind of an ominous ending to that quote. to the people in charge. So
Isn't he supposed to be one of those people in charge?
I don't know. Do you think he still will be in charge? I mean, the
It's an
obvious answer is always, of course, Han's never going to leave. Could this be the season that ends his reign?
Well, he could get kicked up, to the assistant to the traveling secretary position, and somebody new comes in, and it's Chris Getz as the new, general manager. I think that's, again, that ending part is interesting, but I don't know. It's just a weird way, I think, to phrase it. I don't think there's tea leaves that need to be read into there, because I just it wouldn't be, regardless of what you think about the job that Rick Hahn has done. I don't think it would be right, but not that this organization does too many things right. But I couldn't imagine that Jerry would say, you're going to be replaced at the end of the year, but just keep putting out a good face. I just don't feel like that. That doesn't feel right. That's not how you should be doing business. If you don't want the guy to have the job anymore, you let him go and release some of his duties before the trade deadline, because you want to make sure that the next person in is, being in on all these trades and understanding the reasons why, and you're moving pieces for the reasons why you're moving. So I don't know that there's a lot to be read in there. I think the thing that was most infuriating, the segment that was most infuriating about that whole soliloquy there, Nick, was the part about the division that they play in. Saying, well, we just have to be good enough. We just have to be faster than the person running next to us. We don't have to be faster than the bear, type of comment. It's so ridiculous, and it's so weak. It's such a weak comment of, I would like you to actually look inward and go, we need to be the best, absolute best possible team that we can be. And I need to do my job to make sure that the 40 guys are on the roster to start the season and dwindle down to whatever 26-man roster, that it's the best possible team. And we've done absolutely everything we could in the offseason, and nothing to be questioned about how hard we tried to make this team the best possible that it could be. And then we'll go out there and we'll face our competition. Not, well, we probably don't have to do this because the Tigers they're not going to be very good. The Royals haven't been good in years. I'm not worried about them for quite some time. The Guardians are going to Guardian. They'll probably be competitive, but not spend big money. And our competition is a 500 Twins team. That is so weak, Nick. It's unbelievable.
It is. It's sickening. I really feel it's been, specifically the way they've been doing things the last couple of off seasons, just trying to keep up with the division, just trying to keep up of what they're doing, and only do enough to feel like, well, what we have in-house, we feel it matches up, if not better than division rivals. And we just need to make a couple little moves here and there, and we'll be just fine. And that, you said it really well. That's unfortunately the mindset, I believe, and he almost kind of showed his cards there in that comment, which really is a gut punch. The farm system looks completely different. I think they've moved up in their rankings, and we've addressed some situations. I like the priority put on catching. There's been some backstops that have been brought in. We needed some arms; they've been brought in. I kind of had to laugh when the White Sox through social media put out their, blast over the weekend, or maybe it was Friday or something, of all the new faces in the farm system. I mean, 2017 all over again. And I don't know if I've got the stomach right now to be following the Barons and the Knights like I was way back when, where we were just hungry for any information we could get on Fulmer or Birdie or Kopech or Collins. Remember this? And Mancada, and it's like,
don't we have to do 10 push-ups anytime we bring up Zach Collins' name?
I thought that was Lurie Garcia, but maybe I missed. Maybe it is also Zach Collins. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it right now, just because of how badly it's still fresh. The wounds are still fresh with how this went down. 2 playoff wins. Now we could split hairs over, is this a true rebuild or not? And maybe we won't know until the off season. Maybe TA is gone in the off season. Maybe Cease is gone in the off season.
I'll tell you what, if Colson Montgomery keeps swinging like he is in the minor leagues, it eases the pain of letting Tim Anderson go.
Yeah, it's just they built something. It was built incorrectly. It didn't work. It was damaged. Whatever. It didn't function the way it was supposed to function. So they have to rebuild something. I mean, we can. The semantics of it is what it is. Your thoughts on Berger being dealt? It was on the trade deadline. It was not too far from the actual deadline. Shipped off to Miami. We got a a pretty good arm in return. A lot of people saying we clearly won that trade. Well, time will tell. Here's Miami doing it right, doing a $5 burger night as soon as Berger gets in the uniform. Rumor is the Marlins GM orchestrated the deal with Kenny, which is just I hope that's true because it just further cements the just ridiculousness that's going on within the organization. But were you sad to see Berger go?
I was a little bit sad just because he was I mean, the story of a Jake Berger, the injuries and how he's overcome and had his opportunity and actually took advantage of it and played well. I'll power obviously is his game. He's the average wasn't there, which people don't care about average all that much. I don't think the on base percentage was all that great, and he was hitting a lot of home runs at home. It wasn't on the road, so it was kind of like he was great and it was fun, and he had a lot of game-winning hits for the team while he was here, and he brought a lot of good energy, and he played hard. Nick, he hustled. Not a fast person by any means, but he ran the bases really well for being a big guy, I think. But really didn't have you've talked about it. We've all talked about it a lot. It was without a home, really defensively, and we've got too many guys that are too similar. Power hitting DHs. He was the only one really hitting for power though, or first baseman. And if you can get something in return for one of these guys, we've talked about it with him and Gavin Sheets for sure. Like then you've got to make the move because you have to again the arms we talked about the arms that you have to rebuild. So you've got to get pitching back, and he really didn't have an opportunity to play every day because unfortunately he's blocked by Yoan Moncada, who regardless of what you think of him or how he's performed because of the contract, he's going to play. And he's blocked there at third base, really the only position that he's able to play. And even though they floated him out there at second a couple times and tried it out in some warm up or in some situations in the spring training, but I don't like a lot of people were really upset about it, and I get why fan favorite type of guy, but from a business standpoint, I think it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I don't think they knew what to do with Jake Berger. Third base, his health obviously didn't help over the years, but such an easy guy to root for.
Yeah.
I'll miss him as just like the character, the person who seemed to really want to be here. And that's what I think we want, right? If they're trying to design this new culture of guys that want to play here, they want to fight to play here, and the comeback and what he has gone through, I want that kind of chip on their shoulder, that just things weren't handed to them, first year before they even stepped on the field. Here's a huge contract. I mean, he has had to fight to get his time. And when he has had his time, he has made it, he has made an impact. But they're committed to Moncada for a variety of different reasons. They have to be. And now you're hearing all these issues with Moncada's back still. It's been happening all year. He's nowhere near 100%. It can go haywire at any moment. He's out there still playing. Why, I ask, why is he still playing when the team is 23 games under and 13 and a half back? The season is over. Even if you think the fight on Saturday night maybe sparks something with this team, it's over. I don't see why you continue to play him. It's just, if you want to take a look at guys, and I mean, just recently, Sebi Zavala went on the IL, okay, with an oblique situation. They brought up Carlos Perez. And the quote from Grifol is, we get an opportunity to take a look at Carlos Perez. We get to see what he can do. We want to see what he can do. So we're putting Sebi on the IL. Aren't there players that you'd like to get some eyes on that are, in the farm system that can play infield, even if it's just getting Zach Remillard more playing time? If you're trying to develop some sort of culture and a way of playing and eyes and focus on the offseason and beyond, and you've got a guy that is really injured that could maybe further injure himself. You've clearly invested a lot in Yoan Moncada, not just financially, but also in the fact that you moved Berger to Miami because you are on the Moncada train and you're stuck there. Well, don't you want to make sure he's right for next year and get some eyes on some other players that you might have interest in?
Yeah, the next year starts now for you on Moncada, and the earlier he can start whatever kind of treatment he would have to go under, and again, I'm going to shock you here. I'm no doctor. Backs I've heard are very tricky. I don't think it's just a simple fix. Obviously, if it was, it would have been fixed already. But it seems to be something that comes back all the time. And I'd like to think that there was something they could do. Maybe it would never fix it 100%, but there's something they could do now. Put him under the knife, give him some type of procedure, and let him start recovering now to get ready for next year. That seems right to me, Nick. And it's just very odd again how this organization does things. But even if it was just shutting him down for rest, if they say, well, there's nothing we can do medically to really solve it, it just is going to require rest. And then, but how long is the rest? Is it like, okay, if he rests now, is he going to be good for next year? Is it always going to be a problem? And if that's the case, Nick, why in the hell would you ever trade a Jake Berger? Right?
That is because Miami dangled what they dangled. The pitcher that they were interested in giving up for Berger, I guess you take that and you just say, you know what, if it's not Moncada, it's somebody else that we're going to pump in there, because they know that this team is not going to be in contention in 2024. They're going to say all the right things right now for ticket holders and season ticket holders and ticket reps, that they can, make sure that there's something positive out there of like, oh, well, Rick Hahn said we're going to be in contention in 2024. So, I better allocate some money for the re-up of season tickets. And I get that. And so that's all just said right now. That's lip service. But, there's a lot of troubling things happening with this organization. Unfortunately, there's some bright spots, like Luis Robert Jr., which we can, talk about in a moment here. But, Mark said in the comments, it's the development and he's right. And I agree. That's what worries me, is the same folks that we're developing, I think, are going to be trying to develop again. And if Grifol keeps putting this on me, this is on me, all of these things that have slipped through the cracks and we haven't done this properly, and I've been trying to do all of these things since the Cactus League, well, why are we believing in you to do this again next year? Because you're signed for a 3-year deal? If it's clearly on you that you didn't know how to get these guys into playing shape, or they wouldn't play for you, or you couldn't help, your coaching staff couldn't help fix, the issues. And again, it's not all on Grifol. These players, man, they have to own up to it. Failure left and right with a lot of this roster. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, then maybe Grifol's not the guy. And if we're going in a different direction and trying to look for a whole new brand, well, then why stick with this guy with what he dished out this season? I could see if, man, he got guys playing and things were improving and fundamentals were improving. It's just like, hey, we're beat. We just got beat.
Yeah.
And that happens in baseball. But for this same narrative that he keeps saying of, well, I don't know why we're not doing this, and we haven't been able to do this, and these are the things I wanted to do in day one, we're now going to start focusing on them. My guy, I don't think you can be the guy.
Well, it's very troublesome. It's all, I don't know if he is the guy or not, Nick, but I guess it would have been more palatable of a season if we would have saw the turnaround and focus on the small things, and those things got cleaned up. And for the most part, even if they were just an average defensive team and an average, in the margins type of thing, if they were just average, then I would say, wow, Pedro's really starting to put his fingerprints all over this team, and they're really starting to respond to him. And if there were 23 games under 500 because there was, again, massive injuries up and down the lineup and the pitching staff, then at least I could say, they played really hard. They played together, and but it was, again, to the injury bug again. We have to figure that part out. And then next year we will be competitive, because it can't hit 3 years in a row or 4 years in a row. It's got to stop at some point. And we could talk ourselves into the fact that this team would be somewhat competitive next year. But again, none of those things seem to have gotten better. And I blame Daryl Boston.
The holdover.
The only person that's been able to keep his job, Daryl Boston. It's all his fault.
What do you do, Daryl Boston? And look what you did. That stink from the previous regime. You've ruined it all. When people ask just, what's going on with this team, or it's well beyond the record. It's well beyond just what you see on the surface. There's so much happening behind the scenes. And, Luis Robert Jr. got to 30 home runs this past weekend, first Sox center fielder to get to 30 home runs. He's been healthy. I mean, we all knew he was going to be Mr. Danger. If he could really stay healthy, he was going to be the guy that could really make a huge impact in this lineup, a scary impact. I thought it was going to be Eloy and Robert, Thunder and Lightning, at the beginning of the year. It's not the case. It kind of was Robert and Berger. But Robert, so far, he's been able to do it. Didn't want to play on his birthday the other day, but other than that, I get it. Nobody wants to work on their birthday. He's been able to stay healthy. And again, maybe they listened at trade deadline. Maybe the Sox entertained. I doubt it. I do think they were entertaining offers on Dylan Cease. I do believe that. And were you surprised that Dylan Cease didn't get moved?
Dylan Cease, goodness gracious, talk about a guy that's gone from, pretty much telling you what he wants to get on his next check, and people will write it for him. This year looks like it's really weighed on him personally. Something is off with Dylan Cease. Maybe it was the whole trade rumor stuff coming down to us, like not knowing where he would be, which I think is odd. But for a guy that's really pitching to be paid like a top echelon pitcher sometime soon, really hasn't performed like that at all lately. So I am not surprised that Dylan Cease didn't get moved. And I'm not surprised to hear that the Sox would listen on Luis Robert Jr. And I'm not surprised they didn't. I'm not surprised they're both still here, because I'm sure if Rick Hahn is any kind of smart at all, he would be asking for a king's ransom. Oh, and if you would have got that, then I could see why it was, those guys would be moved. So that's what you do in a situation like that. Again, it's always easy when you're on the side of, when you're on the side of trading guys away, and the teardown is the easy part. But he's failed at the second half of that. And he needed a lot in return for those guys, because I think if he was going to do that, he'd have to sell back that this time it's really going to work, because I'm trading away two. Believe me, really this time I'm really going to try hard. I wasn't really thinking clearly last time, obviously. This time I got this. Don't worry about it.
I'm really, really serious about it this time. I'm really going to try. And I need you to really trust me. Promise? Yeah. Will you promise? Will you really promise that you'll trust me?
That sounds like the start of most of my diets. I'm really, really going to try this time. I promise you, it's going to go great.
My thing with Cease, though, Pat, is, what are you holding him on for? Like, you're not going to be competitive for a couple of years, I don't think, even despite the division. I don't think they're going to spend money, as Bob Nightingale, the White Sox whisperer, put out in a USA Today article not too long ago of like, well, the Sox could be big players this offseason. They might actually be spending some money. Give me a break, please. That's not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen, especially when it comes to pitching. So you're going to waste a couple of prime years of Dylan Cease, because he's not going to get re-signed. That's not the White Sox way, especially with a Scott Boras client. So I just look at him like a Jose Quintana situation. He'll probably get dealt like maybe at the deadline next year, if not this
Well,
offseason.
again, I don't think his value was high enough this year, Nick. I mean, I don't have his stats in front of me, but his ERA's got to be over 4.5, I would imagine right now. It's just been awful lately. I think even at his best point in the year was like a 4 point something. So he had never gotten to where he was. His pitch count, he reverted back to old Dylan C stuff, throwing a ton of pitches, walking guys, not lasting long in games. And he started up giving runs like at an alarming rate the last couple outings, if memory serves. So his value wasn't where it needed to be. Maybe the asking price was still at the, last year's, rate. And people were coming in with trade offers on where he's at right now. And it wasn't matching up with what Rick wanted. So I'm okay with Rick looking at like, listen, I'm thinking Cease has got to have a bounce back year next year because of X, Y, and Z, whatever he wants to believe. And if I'm going to move this guy, I got to move him when his value is at its highest. And maybe it is next year early on. If you're looking at the landscape and you're thinking we're not really going to be competitive anyway, you move him at whatever point his value is the highest. And if you can do that early before the trade deadline hits to the final hour, then I think that's a little bit more prudent than letting it string along. And maybe you just don't get that return like you were hoping for.
Before we say goodbye, we missed an anniversary just because it was, during the week and we weren't able to record. And I think the good folks from Last Comiskey put something out, and Frank Thomas made his debut a few days ago back in 1990, the anniversary of Frank Thomas's debut. And you and I and so many others, watching, listening, like that was the sweet spot for me. And I know it was for you, 9, 10, 11 years old. And you didn't have all the technology. You didn't have all of the, even the, like, you didn't have the wherewithal of like these prospects and what's coming, but there were some, murmurs and you got a sense, it was in the papers and like, you got an idea that something big is happening with this White Sox team. They're going to be calling up some guys, and wait till you see this Frank Thomas guy. And I remember, I think it was my dad who just said, because, baseball cards were such a big thing. It's like, if you get a Frank Thomas card, like hold on to it, because he's supposed to be this, this monster for the White Sox. And I think I still have a couple somewhere in a bin in the basement, but I know that was your guy. That was your just favorite player. And I gravitated towards him too. I was Fisk and Ventura and McDowell, but also Thomas, but you were Mr. Frank Thomas. And it was like, as a White Sox fan, we had this force, somebody that was marketable. They were just everywhere. We had that. We didn't have to look at other teams and their superstars. We had that. So kind of a cool moment and a trip down memory lane.
Yeah. For me, like you said, Big Frank is still my favorite player of all time. It's unfortunate that injury had robbed him. I think if you total it all up, maybe this isn't right, but I feel like it was a total of at least 2 seasons of injuries that really, that was taken away from him in terms of his career. So you think about the additional stats that he would have been able to put up over that time. Unfortunate that he didn't end his career as a Chicago White Sox. But, for me as a kid that was not athletic enough to play baseball, just loved the game and would play in the sandlots around in the neighborhood. That's, if I got in a batter's box right now, Nick, that's the stance that I have, because that's all I knew. Because that's how you hit, and it looks a little bit ridiculous. You got the bat waggle over your shoulder. You've got kind of the open stance with the foot up, and you kind of give the snarled look to the pitcher. I mean, with the big nostrils, and that's just I loved watching him play, and it wasn't just because of the raw power. It was because he was an absolute complete hitter. He was one of the most he was probably the most feared hitter outside of maybe Ramirez and maybe some others in the 90s in terms of guys you didn't want to see come up to the plate. And it wasn't, again, not just because he could put the ball in the seats, because he'd take pitches, to right field. He hit opposite way. His opposite way power was amazing. And the fact that he would get on base at an alarming clip because he was so patient, he would take a walk and not have a problem with it. And, he would set you up, he'd set you up by, jumping out of a way of a pitch over the middle of the plate, thinking, maybe he'll get a call, and then the pitcher will try and get back in there or just bring the arms in and hit it over the left field, wall. So just, I could talk all day about Frank Thomas and how much I love watching him play. And it was a great time because he was a legit superstar. And the only thing that I wish is the feet would have stayed healthy enough to play more, and he would have ended his career as a Chicago White Sox. But that's sports.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just when I saw that, I was like, definitely want to bring this up because I know how much of a fan you were. And so many of us growing up, like when he came, on the scene, it was, wow. This guy's going to be something. So,
well, he was just built differently, obviously, the name and everything, but he's just a presence. He was a football player in a baseball player's uniform, really.
Yeah, Pat, always a pleasure, buddy. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And maybe next week we'll find before 40 minutes into the show to bring up something positive. We'll try. That'll be our goal. Hey, let's try and get it to at least halfway through, and let's talk some positives, and we'll try and be more cheerful.
They've got to give some of that. It's tough to just manifest it, but we'll see what happens this coming week. Yankees are in town. Folks, thank you so very much for joining in. On our YouTube channel, doing this live on Sunday. Love the comments. Thank you so much for the support. And you can find the audio absolutely everywhere. We're on Twitter at Good Guys TB. We've got a Facebook fan page that I've got to update and keep up on, but we're there. We're everywhere. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.